Shockwaves spread across 3 continents just hours ago, unconfirmed reports flooding intelligence channels, satellite imagery being analyzed in real time, and then confirmation arrives from multiple independent sources. Iran has shot down American warplanes over the Persian Gulf. At least one pilot is missing. Search and rescue operations are underway, but the clock is ticking and the world is holding its breath. This is not a drill. This is the kind of incident that has historically triggered full-scale military confrontations between superpowers. The kind of event that diplomats spend entire careers trying to prevent. Right now, in classified briefing rooms across Washington, Tel Aviv, Riyadh, and Moscow, military commanders are running through scenarios. Retaliatory strike packages are being prepared, and everyone is asking the same question. What happens next? The timeline is still being pieced together, but here is what we know. In the early hours of Tuesday morning, 2 American F-18 Super Hornets were conducting reconnaissance operations over international waters in the Persian Gulf. The aircraft were operating from the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier stationed in the region as part of America's force projection strategy. According to initial reports, Iranian air defense systems locked onto the aircraft approximately 40 nautical miles from Iranian territorial waters. The systems involved appear to be Russian-made S-300 batteries, advanced surface-to-air missile platforms that Iran has been operating despite international sanctions. Within seconds, multiple missiles were launched. The American pilots received threat warnings. Evasive maneuvers were initiated. Electronic countermeasures were deployed, but at least one missile found its target. The first F-18 was hit. Witnesses from commercial shipping vessels reported seeing a massive explosion in the sky, followed by debris falling into the waters below. The second aircraft managed to evade and return to the carrier, but the pilot of the downed plane ejected. His parachute was seen deploying, and then he disappeared into the Persian Gulf. Search and rescue helicopters were scrambled immediately. American destroyers moved into position. But there is a problem. The location where the pilot went down is dangerously close to Iranian territorial waters, and Iranian naval vessels are also converging on the area. If Iranian forces reach the pilot first, he becomes a prisoner, a bargaining chip, a propaganda tool. The situation transforms from a military incident into a hostage crisis. To understand why this incident is sending shockwaves through global power structures, you need to understand what the Persian Gulf represents. This is one of the most strategically vital choke points on the planet. Approximately 20% of the world's oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. Control over this region means control over global energy prices. It means leverage over economies from Tokyo to Berlin. The United States has maintained continuous military presence here for decades, precisely because of this strategic importance. Iran views the Persian Gulf as its own backyard. Tehran sees American military presence as an existential threat. Iranian military doctrine has evolved specifically to counter American naval superiority in these confined waters. Anti-ship missiles, underwater mines, advanced air defense systems capable of reaching American aircraft operating in what Washington considers international airspace. So when an American plane goes down in these waters, it is a direct challenge to the fundamental assumptions that underpin American power projection in one of the most volatile regions on Earth. The S-300 system is formidable military hardware. It tracks multiple targets simultaneously at ranges exceeding 150 kilometers. Its missiles travel at speeds exceeding Mach 6, giving pilots very little time to react once launched. The American pilots would have been monitoring threat warning systems constantly. When the radar lock occurred, alarms would have sounded. Standard procedure is to take evasive action, deploy chaff and flares, and use electronic warfare systems to jam targeting. But when multiple missiles are launched simultaneously, the mathematics of evasion become brutally difficult. One missile got through. The explosion was catastrophic. The pilot had seconds to assess damage, seconds to determine if the aircraft was controllable. When it became clear the plane was going down, ejection was initiated, and in that moment, floating beneath a parachute canopy, the pilot became the most valuable person in the Persian Gulf, both sides racing to reach him. Whoever gets there first dictates how the next chapter unfolds. Within hours, two completely different versions of events began circulating. The Iranian narrative is defiant. According to the Revolutionary Guard, the American aircraft violated Iranian airspace. The shoot-down was legitimate self-defense. Iranian state media has broadcast footage claimed to show radar tracks of American aircraft crossing into territorial airspace. There are also unverified claims that the missing pilot has been recovered by Iranian naval units. The American narrative is fundamentally different. Pentagon officials have categorically denied any airspace violation. According to their data, both aircraft were operating in international airspace. The Iranian missile launch was therefore an unprovoked act of aggression. Senior military officials have described the incident as an extremely dangerous escalation. There are warnings that Iran will be held responsible for any harm to the pilot, that all options remain on the table. These competing narratives are about establishing justification for whatever actions come next. The ripple effects are spreading through global power structures with alarming speed. In Moscow, Russian officials call for restraint, but Russia has deepening ties with Iran. Russian weapons systems were involved in downing the American plane. In Tel Aviv, Israeli defense officials are in emergency consultations. Any demonstration of Iranian ability to engage advanced American aircraft is analyzed for implications regarding Israeli air superiority in future conflicts. In Riyadh, Gulf Arab states are caught in a delicate position. They host American military bases, but share the Persian Gulf with Iran and cannot afford uncontrolled escalation. In global financial markets, oil prices spiked within hours. Defense stocks are rising. Currency markets show flight to safety. The incident is already having measurable economic impact before a single retaliatory shot has been fired. So where does this go? The optimistic scenario involves rapid de-escalation. The pilot is recovered safely. Both sides issue face-saving statements. Back-channel communications establish protocols for avoiding future incidents. But that requires rationality and restraint at a moment when both are in short supply. A more likely scenario involves limited escalation. If Iran holds the pilot, the United States faces immense pressure to secure release. That could mean negotiations or artillery action like targeted strikes against Iranian air defense sites, cyber attacks against military infrastructure. Any American military response would trigger Iranian counter-responses, attacks on American bases in Iraq, harassment of shipping in the Persian Gulf, activation of proxy forces. The conflict could expand rapidly. And then there are wildcards. What if evidence emerges? The aircraft briefly violated Iranian airspace due to navigation error. What if the pilot dies in Iranian custody? What if another incident occurs while tensions are high? This incident is not occurring in isolation. It is the latest move in a decades-long strategic competition for Middle East dominance involving the United States, Iran, Russia, China, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and numerous other actors. American military supremacy in this region has been built on technological superiority, massive defense spending, and demonstrated willingness to use force. But that dominance is being challenged. Iran has spent years developing asymmetric capabilities designed to impose costs on American operations without engaging in conventional warfare. It cannot win. Russia has returned as a major military player through intervention in Syria. China pursues economic influence through Belt and Road investments. How America responds will be watched by allies wondering if security guarantees are credible, and by adversaries assessing how far they can push. And here is what makes this moment so chilling. We have constructed a global system that depends on stability maintained through deterrence, diplomacy, and carefully calibrated force. Most of the time, this system works. But the system is fragile. It depends on rational actors making calculated decisions with good information. It depends on communication channels remaining open. It depends on military personnel following rules of engagement. It depends on domestic political systems producing leaders who prioritize stability over political gain. What happens when those assumptions break down? When miscommunication leads to bad decisions? When political pressures override strategic rationality? A pilot ejects from a damaged aircraft, and suddenly the world counts down to potential war. Not because anyone wants war, but because the machinery of crisis escalation has its own momentum. Positions become entrenched. Face must be saved. Domestic audiences demand strength. Adversaries probe for weakness. Somewhere in the Persian Gulf, a search continues for a missing American pilot. His fate may matter to millions who have never heard his name, because in international relations, a single individual can become the focal point around which great powers measure their resolve. We believe we have evolved beyond accidents that trigger wars, that modern communications and professional militaries prevent such outcomes. History suggests otherwise. Complex systems, time pressure, incomplete information, and human psychology can produce catastrophic outcomes even when no one chooses them. Global stability is not a given. It is a fragile construction maintained through thousands of small decisions by people the world will never know. Sometimes those decisions happen in seconds, made by pilots and operators responding to lights on screens and voices in headsets. Just reaction, just training, just the hope that the systems will hold. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.